Early life and survival. Cassian wasn't born a rebel, he was born into conflict. Raised during the Clone Wars, Cassian Andor grew up on the planet Kenari, a world ravaged by war. He lost his family at a young age and was taken in by a scavenger named Mayarva. His early life was shaped by chaos, loss, and the constant need to survive. He learned to steal, lie, and fight, not because he wanted to, but because he had to. The smuggler and spy. As he grew older, Cassian became involved in the galaxy's underworld, smuggling, spying, and running dangerous missions. He wasn't a hero, yet. But he had a skill set the rebellion needed: stealth, intelligence, and the ability to do whatever it takes. In the early days of the rebellion, he worked as an intelligence officer for the Rebel Alliance. He did things he wasn't proud of, but in a war for freedom, morality often takes a back seat. The Turning Point. The Disney Plus series Andor gave us a deeper look into Cassian's transformation. We saw his inner conflict, a man tired of running, unsure if he believed in the cause, but slowly realizing he couldn't stay neutral anymore. It was in those moments, in prisons, on the run, facing impossible choices, that Cassian found his purpose, not just fighting against something, but fighting for something. Rogue One and true heroism. Cassian's true heroism came to light in Rogue One. Teaming up with Jyn Erso and a ragtag group of rebels, he led the mission to steal the Death Star plans. He knew the odds. He knew he might not come back, but he also knew that without sacrifice, there could be no hope. Cassian Andor died a rebel, not for glory, but so others could live free. Childhood in the shadows. The Kenari origins. Cassian Jerome Andor wasn't born a rebel. He was born into chaos. His home planet Kenari was isolated, primitive, and largely untouched by galactic technology. But when a Republic mining disaster devastated the region, it marked the beginning of the end for Kenari's people. Cassian was just a child when he witnessed the crash of a Republic ship. That moment, filled with fear, anger, and confusion, planted the seeds of resistance deep inside him. He was eventually taken away from Kenari by Marva Andor, a scavenger and early anti-imperial activist. She adopted him, gave him a new name, and tried to give him a new life. But the past never truly left him. Life under the Empire, a survivor, not a soldier. Cassian grew up in the early years of the Empire. He saw the lies of peace and order for what they were: oppression and control. Without a homeworld or a true identity, he became a drifter. He stole to survive, ran scams to stay afloat, and occasionally took part in shady smuggling operations. He wasn't a soldier. He was just trying to make it to the next day. But even as he avoided the Empire's gaze, Cassian saw what they were doing to others: the fear, the brutality, the slow erosion of freedom. Deep down, something inside him was building. A fire he hadn't named yet. The Reluctant Rebel. Andor series exploration. The Andor series on Disney Plus peeled back the layers of Cassian like never before. We didn't see a confident hero. We saw a man haunted by his past, avoiding his future, and unwilling to commit to anything larger than himself. But circumstances force change. He gets caught up in an Imperial crackdown and ends up in the crosshairs of the early rebellion. Luthen Rael, a mysterious figure orchestrating anti-Imperial operations, recruits him. Not because Cassian believes in the cause, but because he's useful. Still, mission after mission, something shifts. We see it in prison on Narkina 5, a brutal facility where Cassian, like so many others, is treated as expendable. But it's there he truly awakens. With Kino Loy and dozens of prisoners, Cassian leads a daring escape, not just for freedom, but to show that the Empire can be fought. That moment is more than a jailbreak. It's Cassian Andor's rebirth, becoming a true rebel, choosing the cause. After the escape, Cassian could have disappeared again. He had every reason to run, but he didn't. He returns, not to collect payment, not to settle scores, but to offer himself to the rebellion, on his terms. "I'm here to join," he says, "not for money, not for revenge, but because it's right." That decision marks the moment Cassian Andor stops surviving and starts fighting. He becomes an integral part of rebel intelligence, doing the hard work in the shadows. Sabotage, espionage, infiltration, missions that don't make headlines, but make all the difference. Rogue One, the final mission. Rogue One, a Star Wars story, shows us the Cassian who's fully committed. Hardened by years of sacrifice, he's willing to do whatever it takes to stop the Empire. But he's not a mindless operative. When he meets Jyn Erso, the daughter of the Death Star's creator, we see his empathy return. He doesn't just follow orders, he listens, he adapts. Together they lead a desperate mission to steal the Death Star plans from Scarif, a mission the Rebel High Command deemed impossible. Cassian and his team know what they're walking into, but they also know what's at stake. Through fire and death, they succeed. The plans are transmitted to the Rebel fleet, setting the stage for Luke Skywalker's triumph in A New Hope. Cassian doesn't live to see it. He dies with Jyn on the beaches of Scarif. But in that moment, he becomes a legend. Legacy, a spark that lit the fire. Cassian Andor isn't the face of the rebellion. He's the soul of it. He represents the countless unnamed people who fought, bled, and died for a chance at freedom. No destiny, no prophecy, just conviction. His journey, from smuggler to spy to hero, reminds us that change doesn't always come from grand powers. Sometimes it comes from someone who simply chooses to stand up when others can't. The morality of war, Cassian's ethical gray zone. Cassian Andor isn't a traditional hero. He's not noble in the way of Obi-Wan Kenobi. He doesn't have the idealism of Luke Skywalker. In fact, when we first meet him in Rogue One, he kills an informant in cold blood to protect the mission. It's jarring, but that moment sets the tone for who Cassian is. Someone shaped by a harsh reality. He understands something that many others don't. In war, there are no clean choices. Cassian's strength lies in his ability to make the hard decisions, the uncomfortable ones, the ones most people shy away from. He's not motivated by glory. He doesn't expect praise. He just knows that if people like him don't do the dirty work, no one else will. And that is the heart of rebellion. Not flashy lightsabers, but difficult sacrifices in silence. Supporting characters who shaped him, Marva Andor, the woman who rescued him, raised him, and instilled a rebellious fire in him. Her death becomes a major turning point in Andor, pushing him toward action. Her funeral speech becomes a rallying cry for Ferrix and beyond. Fight the Empire. Luthen Rael, the strategist in the shadows, willing to burn everything for the cause. Luthen sees in Cassian what others can't. Potential. Not as a soldier, but as a symbol. Bix Colleen, a friend from Ferrix who represents Cassian's connection to his roots. Her suffering at the hands of the Empire reminds him why the fight matters. Jyn Erso, the partner who helped him rediscover hope. With Jyn, Cassian found not only a teammate, but someone who matched his courage and conviction. Together, they carried out the mission that would alter the fate of the galaxy. These relationships ground Cassian's journey. They show that rebellion isn't just about politics, it's about people. Contrasts with other Star Wars heroes. When we compare Cassian to other central Star Wars characters, we find fascinating contrasts. Luke Skywalker was a farm boy destined for greatness. Cassian Andor was a survivor forged in pain. Obi-Wan had the Jedi Code. Cassian had his instincts. Rey was drawn by legacy. Cassian ran from his. But in many ways, Cassian is more real than any of them. Because he doesn't have powers. He doesn't have a chosen path. He simply chooses, again and again, to resist tyranny, even when no one is watching. He's a mirror for every unsung hero who fights behind the scenes. Symbolism and themes in Andor and Rogue One. Cassian's story explores some of the most mature themes in Star Wars. Identity. Who are we when everything we know is taken away? Loyalty versus survival. Can someone loyal to nothing learn to believe in something greater? Sacrifice. What does it cost to ignite a revolution? The Andor series in particular treats these questions with brutal honesty. It's a story about radicalization, about how ordinary people are pushed to their limits, and how oppression breeds resistance. When we watch Cassian slowly become the man who will give his life for a cause, it reminds us that heroes don't start out as legends. They become legends because of what they endure. Cassian's legacy in the Star Wars universe. Cassian Andor's actions have massive ripple effects. Without him, the Death Star plans are never stolen. Without those plans, Luke never blows up the Death Star. And without that victory, the rebellion may never win. Cassian's legacy lives on through the victories of others. Through Leia, through Mon Mothma, through the Resistance decades later. Even though he never lived to see the end of the war, his hand was on every step forward. He represents the faceless many who stood up, even when the odds were impossible. Why Cassian's story matters today. Cassian's story isn't just fiction. It resonates because it's about real-world truths, injustice, corruption, the abuse of power, and the courage it takes to fight back. Not with superpowers, but with conviction. His journey tells us, you don't need to be chosen. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to stand up, even when no one else will. In many ways, Cassian Andor is the most human Star Wars hero, and that's exactly what makes him unforgettable. If Cassian Andor's journey moved you, if it reminded you of the power of quiet resistance, of the strength in ordinary people, then you're in the right place. Hit that like button to support this story. Tap subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a deep dive into the Star Wars galaxy. And tell us in the comments,